Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to the best horror films of 2022. Oh boy, I am excited about this. Okay, like it's no secret, we have mentioned this a couple of times. This has been an outstanding year for horror, to say the least. We really got the luck of the draw by deciding to reboot this when we did. And, I'm not going to rehash the story. If you've been on the channel a little bit, you've heard it a couple times. If not, we'll save it for the year video when we hit that mark. But yeah, I mean, honestly, when we did, I didn't even realize. Like, I don't know. Did you realize what we were walking into with just how many great horror movies we were stepping into, or was
I,
just
I didn't realize what we were in for until, we started getting deeper into like the fall season where it was
mm,
like, oh wait, this is coming out. I mean, Splatterthon, we really hit it where it was like as we started coming up in like August, I think.
mm-hmm.
I don't know, like maybe Nope kind of kicked it off, but I would say Prey we were really in it where it was like we started realizing what was actually coming up in the next few months and covering it on the Sunday Scaries and seeing, what release dates were what, and then that October racked up really quick. I mean, I had no idea, because we were kind of in for like looking at everything. Seems like the first half of the year we had a couple strong films, but then it was kind of a little slower. It seemed like so. And then as we got through the summer and into the fall, it really started picking up. So it was like one hit after another hit, So it was. I didn't expect it, but I mean, boy, am I glad we started this when we did.
I know, right? Because like it's seriously, this is one for the books, for horror fans, especially. I mean, even just to say this, just to kind of throw this out front. I mean, we're film fans. I mean, we are in general. There's a lot of great stuff other than horror that came out this year too. Like, I mean, I know we discussed this a little bit, talking about movies that may not be horror related, but we are coming down to the wire here. I know, Luke, you said you haven't seen enough of the non-horror stuff to really feel comfortable in making that opinion
Yeah.
noted. But what are just a couple of movies that you've seen so far that you could say that are non-horror that are really sticking with you so far this year?
Honestly, the one I had just watched were the Banshees of Inisherin, and I gotta say, like that movie, I wasn't sure what I was in for. Again, that one snuck past me, and I think maybe it was because we were just so diving so deep into horror that I totally missed it. And then they started playing uh, the previews for it, and it was like, oh, it's streaming. It's going to be streaming. It's going to be on Blu-ray, and I was like, oh wow, this is already out there. I had actually just watched that one, and I gotta say, it's so offbeat, so weird. Very small, contains, and Colin Farrell is just always amazing in anything. So that one is honestly probably right now really sticking with me. It's one I highly recommend for people. It's not going to be your typical kind of um, film where you know what to expect going in. It's so weird. You haven't seen it yet, right?
No, as we're posting this, by the time this is posted, I probably will have, because I have a nice long weekend here. Because we're recording this just a couple days ahead of time, of course. But this is going up on the 1st of 2023. So, I will definitely am planning on sitting down tomorrow, which would be Saturday for us, watching it. Yes.
That one, I tell you, I'm curious to see your thoughts because it's hard for me to be like, I recommend this and I know everyone's gonna like it. You know what I mean? So it's one of those ones where you really have to watch it and sit down, and it's something it's just so offbeat. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Mhm.
excited for you to see it. I'm curious to see your thoughts, but it's one that I think, regardless if you love it or don't, it's something that is probably always going to be talked about.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love Martin McDonough. Coming off something I just saw yesterday, actually, because yeah, I went to the movies and didn't tell you guys about it. Because not a horror movie. I mean, maybe to some people, depending on how you view the content. But I saw The Whale, and that was excellent. I mean, Brendan Fraser, seriously, is someone that I'm definitely pulling for, just like everybody else. I grew up with him in The Mummy and Blast from the Past, and Encino Man and all that shit. Like, I watched a ton of his movies. So it's like seeing him have this resurgence is great. I mean, his performance is just gut wrenching and humorous and just wonderful. Like, it's seriously one of those films that I didn't see the trailer for. I intentionally did that. It's just something that, like, when it came out, I was like, I don't know. I hear this is pretty rough. Not like not like rough as in the quality, but the content.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where it's like, I deal with some body dysphoria personally. That's something. So it's dealing with somebody who's morbidly obese. It's something where it's like, oh, is this gonna like kind of like upset me? And man, I was blown away just by, again, the balance of just humor and emotion and everything. Seriously, a very important movie. But really, I've seen a lot of good shit this year, I'd say. Like, I mean, and that isn't horror. Like Top Gun was great. I enjoyed that movie. I love my popcorn flicks. I've seen Avatar twice. Surprised myself that I actually enjoyed that movie as much as I have. I think it's really cool. But I think the one that's really sticking out for me is an actual early Christmas gift. Got it all the way back in March when I saw The Northman. I still think that's my favorite. I mean, it's Robert Eggers. He's horror alum for us. And I mean, this movie is just breathtaking. It's brutal. It's awesome. I highly recommend checking it out.
That's one I still have to check out. It's
You
on my
do.
list, and I'm probably gonna check it out over this long weekend. Glass Onion is another one I want to see.
Great.
Uh,
Loved it.
those those
My
are my
wife and I
two.
loved it.
Those are my two that I absolutely have to see over the next few days. I know I wanted to see them prior to recording this, but then I was like, well, I better brush up on some of my horror stuff again just to rewatch and try to get my lineup straight. And it's funny because this is a year, really first time where I can really think of there would be a lot of films. We can almost drop best horror in a lot. You know where I mean? Where it's like some of these films that are going to be appearing in this list can just be best films.
Best films.
It's
Yeah.
it's very intriguing to see this kind of marriage between great filmmaking and the intertwining of horror now. It's like they're not just strictly horror films. There's a lot of great filmmaking. Um, and a lot of stuff. And I think 2022 is a perfect representation of that.
Yeah. Just like looking through my list here, I would easily say for one, two, three, four, five. Yeah, I'd say probably at least six of my top 10 I would have probably put on my best films of the year list also. So like that's saying something. And I mean, yeah, they're all horror related, but it's just like, and of course, we're horror buffs. Like we love this shit.
Yep.
But I would see these showing up on other people's lists too, just because it was such a show out year for horror. It was just a show out year for this genre stuff in general. I mean, even like the smaller stuff, like we've had a lot of great films, like Terrifier 2. We're gonna be talking quite a bit about that, I imagine. But it's one of those things where it's like, what a triumph for that little movie. Like it's got a budget of, what was it, $400,000?
Yeah, something like that. Very
And
small.
yeah, and it's gone on to make like $11 million at the box office. Like that's great. That's insane. All that good stuff. And there's more stuff to come in 2023 that I'm excited for. That's just like that. We're seeing like Blood and Honey's getting a theatrical release. Another movie that we is kind of popping up on our radar that I'm real excited to see real soon here is Skinamarink,
Yeah.
which is very micro budget, very very tiny, and it's just like it's all getting theatrically released, and it's like it's such a powerful turning point 2022 has been for indie horror, and I'm here for it.
I think it's gonna go down as a landmark year.
Mhm.
Where I don't think anyone could have anticipated it. I think a lot of the horror fans, the horror community, were surely hoping something like this would happen. But Terrifier 2 did so much business in the theater, really proving that. I mean, there's a fan base, there's a market for it, and the fans are hungry, they're rabid for it, and I'm very curious to see what 2023 is going to look like. But 2024 is really like, okay, the end of 2022 was like, oh, okay, well, there's something here. So coming out with guns blazing probably in 2024, I think we're going to see a lot of stuff.
I think so too. I think the next 2 years are going to be huge, as far as horror stuff. And because I mean, we've already heard from a lot of big studios who reported on it on the Sunday Scaries a bunch, is that they're really starting to pivot to horror, and streaming has been massive. I mean, Hulu had two big ones come out this year with Prey and Hulu, and I'm sorry, Hellraiser, both on Hulu, both excellent films. And it's just something where it's like, yeah, I'm really excited to see them come into the fray a little bit more. And then also we have TV with, Chucky, I know was a 2021. It started, but gained even more momentum this year. We have The Last of Us starting soon, which we'll probably do on Primetime Terrors. We got a lot of stuff coming with horror television as well. But unfortunately, horror television, maybe we'll do a list later on down the road, but I mean, there's not much of it right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, there's a bit, but, it's not like we could put a real definitive, entertaining list
I
together, I
think we'll
would say.
get there in the next few years.
I
I
think
think
so
it's
too.
it's a
I think
big
with
turning
Friday the
point.
13th
Yeah.
and any of these other franchises that get there, we could easily at least do a top five. But yeah, I guess we should probably hop into some of this here because we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to get through. Starting off the top with something, we said in one of our previous videos. I think it was the end of the Cape Fear podcast. We talked about how we're not doing a top 10 worst, but we figured we would kind of amend that because I know some people like that stuff. You know, I don't see the need to make a whole separate video for it. But it's one of those things where we're like, let's do some dishonorable mentions. And it's no secret. There's been a lot of legacy horror that hasn't worked for us. And on my dishonorable mentions list, I got a couple of those. And Luke, I know you didn't really write one out because I think we were pretty much on the same page.
Yeah.
I know you had one addition to this when I sent you the list earlier. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to go through them. We'll do a little general talk about them. But we're talking Halloween Ends, Pray for the Devil, Scream 5. I know that one's going to sting for a lot
Yeah,
of
it
people.
is.
Men and They Slash Them. Yes, these were the 5 films of this year that really disappointed us and really sent us off into, kind of, I didn't enjoy my time with that movie. Um, I know we've had movies that we've talked about, if you've been keeping up with our reviews, where it's like, yeah, that was disappointing, and we didn't really like it, but a couple of these ones really stung. And yeah, it's tough. I mean, the big two especially, but one that really stung for me was Men, because I really like Alex Garland,
Yeah.
and I was really excited to see another Alex Garland movie. And for this one to just feel so heavy-handed and just so up its own ass, just was really something that I was not expecting. It really left a bad taste in my mouth.
And that's one where looking at it, it seems so weird and intriguing just by the preview that I was so excited for it to see what he was bringing to the table. And like going into that film, I think for me, what stings even more is that there were glimmers of things that could have been like, oh, if you tweak this could be a really interesting story here, And of course, a lot of that gets thrown out the window, and we're subjected to that ending, and it's just very awkward. You don't really get it, and it just seems overly pretentious, I think, in certain areas. So it was just such a debacle where I was like, man, I really wanted to like this. I was excited for it. I was you know almost got ahead of myself where I was like, man, I'm definitely gonna like this film, and then we get in there and it gets going and it's weird and you're like, I can't wait to see where this is going, and then it all just kind of falls apart. So I think that was probably its biggest letdown there was, I was so excited, so ready to like that, and it just didn't hit. And I think that's honestly the same for Scream 5, where I was like, I go into Scream films pretty positive. I always think, there's going to be something really great coming out of this. And I mean, it's not a horrible film, but it was so underwhelming in terms of what they could have done and where they went with that one as well. And it just seemed almost like, uh, I want to say a little bit lazy by the end of it.
Yeah, so Scream 5, yeah, I can agree with you, dude. Like, it was one that you and I were both super excited for. I mean, just walking into that movie theater, at the time, I've been very open about just not really being in the best place at the start of this past year. Like, I was definitely in a bit of a depression spout, down in the dumps pretty hard. So I was excited. I was really looking forward to seeing a good horror flick and, hanging out with, 2 friends and everything. And the vibes were right. Everything felt like it was going to be good. And then, we're sitting there watching that movie, and I just remember you and me sitting next to each other audibly, just like, you know, not necessarily like talking to each other much, but just like having the same reaction to shit where we just be like, dude, what the fuck? Like, are you
Yep.
serious? And it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I know this worked really well for people, but it's just one of those things where I just felt like they didn't really do much different to set themselves apart. And,
Yeah.
uh, I guess minor spoiler for Scream 5 here. They I won't mention a name, but they do kill off a major character, and it hit hard with us. So it's like, and I know that's going to happen. I'm not upset with that, but it's just like the fact that the movie around it just didn't feel like a proper send off. It kind of felt kind of lazy how it was executed. And yeah, I mean, we're going to have an opportunity to really dive into this movie this year before Scream 6 comes out. And preface it to say we're both real excited for Scream 6.
Absolutely.
Like, this can definitely turn itself around. We said it about the Halloween trilogy, which we're about to get into, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I think that Scream 6 has a lot of good things going for it. So I hope they can right this ship. I like Radio Silence. I really like Ready or Not. I think that they can do a really good job. It's just I think they played it too safe for me.
Yeah. And that's where it's like where you're talking about the death in this film, where it's such a defining moment, something that you go back to this film and you want to be like, it's a great film and this happens. But I feel like this film was defined by that defining moment in a sense where it's like that's really the only thing that it has in it for me, an underwhelming film with a character death like that. It's just like a double whammy where it's like, well, it was a great film, it really laid out, it paced well for that death, but it didn't. And I'm just like, I can't believe that this happened in this iteration, in this installments here. So, it just didn't resonate with me. I think the kind of ending in terms of how they lay out the story, and you always want those intriguing twists with the killers and the ghost face and stuff like that. And I don't think it was. I think it was, it's like, it just seems like such a typical 2022 uh where where we go with this. So it wasn't anything new, wasn't anything intriguing. It was just, again, lazy.
Yeah. And I mean, Pray for the Devil and They Slash Them, honestly, we could put these two together here because they
Yeah.
were just very forgettable. They didn't really do anything to set themselves apart. They felt very formulaic. Even for They Slash Them, which had Kevin Bacon a part of the cast, you wasted him. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, by the end of that film, it doesn't do anything different. It doesn't do anything interesting. And it just kind of makes you sit there and go, oh, well, whatever. That was pretty generic, all in all. And it's a great concept. It's a great title. I don't know why they didn't do anything with it.
Yeah, and that's where, going into that film, I was like, "Wow, this could be really fun." A conversion camp, what they were going to be diving into. I was like, "Oh, they can really do something very intriguing and psychological here," and they didn't. It just became, again, formulaic, same old stuff, and slightly offensive in certain areas.
Mhm.
It just didn't work. And then Pray for the Devil. That one was one of the ones that I was debating on whether to go or not because I didn't. I
That was a
think that was.
game day decision. I was
Yes.
at your house for a separate reason, and you said, "Fuck it, I'm going."
And that was like, because I think we were doing Splatterthon stuff, and I was like, "You know what? Maybe I should just sit this one out again." And I was like, I'm just gonna go and hope for the best, and I got the worst. It was just, and it wasn't surprising. I didn't expect that film to be great in any sense. It didn't look good. But it was just like, okay, it's pretty much living up to my expectations. So
Hmm.
it's just one of those in 2022. You can't deal with formulaic. I think, especially when we dive into some of the best, it's like you really want that intriguing storytelling.
Hmm. And really, I think the big elephant in the room for us is Halloween Ends. We don't need to dive too deep into it. We've said a lot. We have an hour and a half full breakdown discussion on the channel if you really want to get deep into our thoughts on it. And then we got like what, a 45-minute, 50-minute review
Yeah,
itself. Like, we went deep. We talked probably a good 3 hours that weekend about Halloween Ends. Um, we weren't happy with it. You know, Mostly, I think I can say this now, at least personally, not necessarily with the take that they took. I'm fine with that, but like, it's just, why are you doing it in this movie?
yeah,
It doesn't wrap up this trilogy. It's not satisfying, and I mean, I'm sorry. That's just kind of how all these movies have been. I know we made jokes about it going into it, where it's like, I can't believe I'm going to walk out of this trilogy and say that Halloween Kills is my favorite, considering that one is very bare bones. But like, yeah, it's the most fun out
Yeah.
of them. Evil Dies Tonight aside, it is just one of those things where it's like it's a lot of fun, and I can see myself watching it again. And again, you said it best, I think, in that review, if I remember correctly, where you said it's a triumph for the fact that Halloween Ends made you appreciate Halloween 2018 more.
Yeah.
And it did for me too. It's one of those ones where it's like, well, fuck. I mean, I'm gonna go back and watch that and at least enjoy myself a little bit more. It sucks. I hated it. I wanted it to be better. Um, and again, I think it sucks even worse because we've said it a couple times where it's like, if this was just the fourth film and we change some details, we take Laurie out of it, and they just stumble across Michael, and this is kind of them going into a different direction, this had a lot of potential. It could have been good.
And that's where it's like we don't have a problem with that take. It just doesn't work as the conclusion for a trilogy here. And that's where it would have been an intriguing take. But again, you throw away all the characters you've been building and focus on a different story. It feels something left to be desired in that film, and that really hinders that film completely. And it's like, at least 2018, not the biggest fan of it. They kind of paint themselves into a corner with a lot of things, but at least they were establishing characters. Halloween Kills were facilitating everything. We're kind of getting back into that slasher form while still spending time with these characters. So I can't hate it for that. And then by the time we get to Halloween Ends, it's like, well, okay, now epic conclusion. We're ready for it. And we don't get it. I mean, we do, but it's bookended at the very end there and backloaded, and it just feels like almost shoehorned in and rewritten. So you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's just like, so it just doesn't work. So, again, it would have been an intriguing take for a different filmmaker to take that on and say, I'm going to just tell a different kind of Halloween story, but it doesn't work as a conclusion for that trilogy.
Yep. Solid book though. Very
Very solid.
solid book.
A lot
Yeah,
of great ideas in there.
we got to finish that.
We do.
And then I can't believe it. Before we move on, because we're about to move on to honorable mentions, this movie was so bad that it just completely purged my mind until we were talking about this. But Jeepers Creepers Reborn, easily the worst film I saw this year. Easily. You skipped it. You're better off for it. Don't even watch it out of curiosity. You haven't, have you?
No.
I'm like, I don't think you've had time considering all the shit we've had to watch.
But
But like,
question.
what?
Should that appear on Our Better Off Dead?
Oh, fucking absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So
So
definitely.
as we're planning the new year, let's say it right here. That's gonna appear on Splatterthon.
Okay.
I'm
All
gonna
right.
save my viewing until that October of
I almost
2023.
I almost think we should do like a record your reaction kind of thing, like sit in your living room and like set up a camera just so you can watch
I'm
it, and
down.
then I'll do a super cut of your best reactions, because like that's a fucking wild one, brother. Yeah, that's easily the worst of the year. That makes everything else we talked about look like a fucking gem.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was rough. But hey, enough of the bad, enough of the dishonorables. Let's move on to some honorable mentions, and then we'll start getting into our top 10 here. Obviously, honorable mentions, so I don't have to explain it too deep if you've watched a dozen of these videos already. These are movies that we liked a lot. We really did. They just almost make the list, but they just didn't quite get there. Again, nothing wrong with anything, I think, on our honorable mentions list. In a different year, maybe a less stacked year, I could see some of these easily popping up on my top 10. I'm sure it's the same for you. We've said, great year. So I think I'll kick it off with my honorable mentions, and then we'll kick it off with you for the lists. Um, and I'm just going to shotgun mine real quick, and then we'll shotgun yours, and then we'll just kind of talk about them.
Yeah.
But for me, I have them numbered, but like it doesn't really matter. Number 11, I have Beast with Idris Elba. Number 12, I have Glorious. Number 13, I have Hellraiser. And number 14, I have Christmas, Bloody Christmas. So, all great films. Luke, hit me with your honorable mentions.
All right. Well, I only had a couple, and I'll tell you how stacked this has been. I've been forgetting. I honestly forgot about Glorious, so that would appear on there as well. And then I know we just did it, but Christmas, Bloody Christmas totally slipped my mind as well. So both great films, both very, independent, wonderful stuff. So those would definitely appear on mine as well. But what did appear, Orphan First Kill. Um, I have Fresh, which was initially going to be in my top 10, but got bumped for a new film that I had just seen very recently. And Nope, also on there, which again, another strong year for horror and just did not make the cut.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good picks. I've yet to see Fresh. You spoke very highly of it. There were a couple times I tried to make time to watch it so that way I could see if it pops up on my list. But unfortunately, I did not get there. So, but
Um,
I'll watch it for sure.
yeah, I
It's one
recommend
that's
it.
on there.
I have a couple issues with the ending of it a little bit. Just where they take it, but overall, Sebastian Stan's
I
performance
love that
was
guy. So
it.
easily easy
It's
sell.
it's perfect. The concept is wonderful. I don't know if you know the concept at all. I'm not going to spoil it
I'm
for you.
lightly familiar with it, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm just gonna go in with what I know already.
There's
So
just a phenomenal, him dancing to a song while packaging things is just absolutely phenomenal. What a wonderful scene. So very, very different, very weird. Highly recommended.
and that's another Hulu one, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah, Hulu had a year, man. Yeah, no, I'm interested to see Fresh. Like we said, Christmas Bloody Christmas was a win for Joe Bagos for us. You know,
Yes.
we've been very we have a lot of
Critical.
criticisms. We've been very critical, thank you, of a lot of his films in the past. You know, not on the podcast, but maybe we'll dive into those at some point. You know, we have some thoughts. Hellraiser was one that I still need to go back and rewatch. You know, the more that I sit with that viewing, I think that it was a little unfair because, you know, we were just so tired. If you don't know the story, we saw that and Terrifier back to back, and we had to drive a good bit to get to Terrifier. So it's just one of those ones where it's like, by the time I finished it, it was 3:30 in the morning. You know, I was really burned out, but I still enjoyed it. But I wanted to watch it again before we put this together, but I just
Yeah.
didn't get there again. So
Same with me. Honestly, my viewing of Hellraiser seems like a fever dream because it was just like we had the commute to go see Terrifier 2, sitting through Terrifier 2, and then the commute back from Terrifier 2, and then doing the review, editing the review, and then trying to watch Hellraiser, and then doing a review of Hellraiser. So
yeah,
it's just like, what a night it was. And then I think I ran on an hour of sleep and went to work, and it was just that one is never really sat right in my brain. I've been meaning to go back and reappraise that film because I remember a lot of great things happening, but it was just like did not have time to go back and check it out. But it is one definitely I want to go back because I remember being so happy about that film compared to some of the Hellraisers we've had to sit through in the
yeah.
past.
I think maybe we throw that one on the podcast here. If not this year, then the following year.
Yeah,
It'll give us a reason to sit down and watch it. You know, but I'm excited too. I definitely feel like doing it. Indie horror has been a smash this year. We've been talking about it a bunch. Glorious, one of those ones that popped up on Shutter. I remember when this came up as a potential story on Sunday Scaries,
yeah,
and you know, I think it was the story. It was before it was a trailer. I had brought it
yeah,
up to you, and you were just like, "Oh, I don't know." Lovecraftian glory hole film. Like, what the hell is this? Like, we had some. It's one of those things where we had some opposing news stories, so it got bumped. I got outvoted, you know, out of two votes. But you know, I conceded, I guess you'll say, or I yielded, and it turned out. I remember you watched it before I did, and you really enjoyed it, and then I watched it, and very solid flick, very funny, very unique, original. It's super small, great use of one location. And just I gotta say, like looking back on it, it's one that I really want to rewatch because again, it's more about the dialogue and the conversations in this
yeah.
movie, and just kind of how the characters learn about each other and dissect each other. It's funny, it's really off-putting, and it's just one of those ones that it's like it's honestly one of the most unique films of the year.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons, voice acting never misses. He's a great actor in general. So as soon as we knew that he was going to be attached to that, I mean, you were expecting some magic there, and he did deliver. Great twist at the end too, in
Yes.
terms of not really seeing knowing what to expect there, and then when they kind of just hit you all with it. I mean, especially at the end of the film like that, really lets you sit with it and realize kind of you've been sitting with a character. You're like, wait, what? So really great film. Again, very small, but they made a lot of use of the effects, the coloring, everything there. Really, really great stuff. Nice twist on an HP Lovecraft kind of property. You know what I mean? So I think they did that really well. Really brought that into 2022. Again, just one that totally fell out of my brain when we were coming up with these lists, but definitely a really solid film.
Yeah, and a great one from a female director.
Absolutely.
I think Rebecca McKendry, I think, was the one who did that.
Yes. Yep.
And she has gotten, I believe, she did a segment in All Hallows Eve, and then she's got a Christmas one, doesn't she?
I don't remember, to be honest.
It's I can pull it up here real quick. One second. Yeah, All the Creatures Were Stirring from 2018.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've seen that on Tubi, I think, and it's one that I do want to check out. But she is it looks like a pretty smaller budget film, but she's definitely got a lot of potential. I think Glorious did a lot to boost her. I'm excited to see what she does next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty, and then yeah, for me, pops up on my honorable mention, but Beast, again, fun movie, creature feature. I love fucking Idris Elba, dude. He's the best. Charlton Copley, I love their fucking relationship in that movie. They
Absolutely.
they just play off each other so well. They feel like kindred spirits and best friends. The family unit is strong. You can say what you will about the movie when you watch it, if it's just kind of one of those B-rate thrillers. I think there's a little more to that. I think that you were also surprised by how much you enjoyed it. Uh, but it is one of those things where it's like, I don't fault anybody for it not being up your alley, but it is one that I'm excited to own. I'm kind of just waiting for a voodoo sale on it. But also I've kind of been delaying because it's been on Peacock.
Yeah.
So it's kind of when I can watch it for free. But it is one that I ended up revisiting. And it's like I enjoy it, dude. It's one I'll definitely throw back on here and there. It's a solid flick. It's got some good jump scares. It's really everything I could want in a Killer Lion movie.
And that was one I had a lot of hesitation going into. Um, didn't really know what to feel about it, but then sitting in the theater, seeing that connective tissue that they really made an effort to do storytelling and to build those relationships, and you really do feel it in that film. That it turned out to be a great experience, and it's like, again, one of those films that kind of opens your eyes to make you a little more open to a sort of a creature feature about a giant lion, or a cocaine bear, maybe, all this stuff. So it's just like, it really opens the door, because I think this, again, we were talking quality filmmaking, put this a few years ago, I think this would have just been cheap laughs, cheap kills, and that's all she wrote. But this one was an actual Idris Elba vehicle with a giant lion, So I think there was a certain amount of care handled here, and it really does show.
Absolutely. Again, any of these films could have made our top 10, or our top 10. Luke, did you have any more on yours? I'm sorry, I'm kind of slipping. I know you had Nope on there.
No, I only
Uh,
had only had a couple. So
okay, so yeah, and so yeah, I guess we can probably start hopping into it. But yeah, honorable mentions. Not saying that they're bad, they're great, but they just didn't crack it. So, Luke, why don't you take us away and start us off with your number 10?
all right. So I'm assuming the way we're doing this is I'm just going to mention if it appears on your list. We're not going to dive into a discussion of it just
Yeah,
yet.
until we catch up with each other, yes, which could be a second.
Yeah,
So
it'll be a minute. We'll hammer through these, and then we'll get into our real discussions here. But coming in at number 10 for me is the Ty West film Pearl.
that's a little higher on my list.
It is.
So yeah, so coming in at number 10 for me is The Cursed.
That's a little higher on my list.
Gotcha there. So, then coming in at your number 9 spot, then, sir.
My number 9 is X.
X. Okay. My number 9 is Nope, which we could talk about that because
Yeah, it's
that's
only
that
my
showed
honorable
up
mention.
on your honorable mentions. Um, yeah, Nope was one when I was really sitting down, thinking about putting this list together and really comparing what we've had for the year. Um, Obviously, I'm a big Jordan Peele fan. I like his work. I like the two previous movies he's done. In my review, I think I said that I liked this the least out of the three.
I think you were battling. You were battling between this and Us still. I think you may have said Us was last because I
I
had a
think, um,
discussion about that.
yeah, because I had I kind of gave it a rewatch. It showed up on one of the streaming services recently. Was that Peacock
Peacock.
as well?
Yes,
Yeah,
Peacock.
they're killing it. But I it showed up on there. I got to rewatch it. And I don't know why. I think my second viewing I connected with this movie a lot more. It really kind of cemented that second spot for me out of his trilogy. I'm going Get Out, I'm going Nope, and then I'm going Us. I just think that the stuff at the beginning with Gordy is absolutely horrifying. Those some of those images I feel like really burned into my head this year
Yeah.
with that, and then just overall, um, it comes down to the characters for me in this movie. I love Kiki Palmer. I love Daniel Kaluuya. I love how they all interact, and you know, it, does this movie kind of get a little too big for its britches by the end? I think so. I think that, they kind of take their threat and they throw it in your face a little too much at the end, with it kind of being this ethereal kind of monster that's like a bit bigger. Um and I kind of liked where they went with it before they really unveiled it, where we got to see kind of the inside of it when it was sucking people up and how scary that was. And this just really felt like, although not so deep into the horror, a really interesting science fiction film. And it just really stuck with me. So I felt like it had to make it somewhere on this list.
Yeah, it only made honorable mentions for me because of the ending is a little too I don't want to say pretentious, but kind of art house in a film where I don't know necessarily if we needed that. Uh, Exposing so much, and the amount of time that they spend on it almost becomes really we're still here. The stuff with Gordy, I agree absolutely. Some of the most terrifying things, and that's why it ends up, in the discussion for me, even so close to my list. Cracking the top 10 because that stuff is so compelling. And it's like one of those things where we talked about it in the review. I wish we would have gotten more of that, but we didn't. So you can't review the movie you didn't get. But so, like, what we did get for me, I understand. I think Jordan Peele had said something where he said the audience comes in to see Close Encounters of a Third Kind and realizes they're in a Jaws film by halfway through it. And again, coming out of that theater, I had mentioned that it felt like a Jaws film to me. And but the tension's not there because it's in the sky. We can go cloud to cloud, but I don't think it has the same feel as Jaws popping up out of the water. So for me, it didn't resonate that much. It's still a great film. I think the tension for me just wasn't there. And you know me, I'm a huge fan of these closed, claustrophobic, smaller films. And this one felt a little too grandiose for me by the end of it. And I think it just became a little too much. But again, Jordan Peele is gonna already an iconic filmmaker, is going to be a legend by the time he decides to call it quits and hang up his camera equipment. But it's I'm excited to see what he's going to do next. This one did not 100% hit with me. It's something yes, I have yet to revisit after that initial viewing, and I think maybe I do need to go back and check this one out again because I enjoyed the characters here. It just was that lack of tension. I love the nighttime, the blood coming all out and onto the house. I think
I
great
think
visual.
that's my favorite scene,
Um,
especially the Jurassic Park vibes of
yeah.
him in the truck, just with and then he gets into the service vehicle and the music's playing and slowing down, like so creepy.
And I think maybe adding starting out in the day and then when the threat comes at night and that's what we stick with, I think could have been even more compelling because it's under the guise of night and we could only see the lightning and then the flashes of this creature. I think would be very interesting. I think sometimes when you put it in the daytime like that and it's so exposed, I think, it just didn't hit for me in terms of that tension that I was looking for. But again, great film, great character work. He did a lot of great choices. It just, was a little dicey for me a little bit.
I completely get it. Alrighty, so let's move into your number 8, sir.
All right, hold on, because I already lost my list here. Oh, number 8. We are coming in with Terrifier 2.
Okay, that's a little higher for me. So, my number 8, we're coming in at the menu. So then let's get into your number 7.
My number 7 is The Menu.
Okay, perfect. So we can discuss that here for a minute then. So my number 8 comes in at the menu. I mean, this was one that we didn't talk about not too long ago. I feel like nobody really saw this movie, and that's
Yeah,
so strange. It's something where it's like
really
I
good
don't.
stuff too.
It's
Obviously,
it's got amazing performances, a very unique concept, a lot of great character actors in this, and overall, I'm excited to see this again. As of recording, I think this thing drops on HBO this week,
oh,
or it
does
already
it?
has this week. Or it's next week. It's one of the two, but it's coming out soon, and I'm excited to rewatch this again. I'm
Yes.
really looking forward to it. I think that Ralph Fiennes himself plays this character who, at the start of this, you kind of really see him as, okay, easily, this is a deplorable, self pretentious kind of piece of shit. And then as the movie goes on, you kind of start to sympathize with him a bit. And then you kind of start to realize, okay, you've really just been broken down by almost the pretentiousness of the system and just like the way everything is structured. And it does have a lot of commentary on people and just how we kind of conduct ourselves in society. It's a lot of broad stuff, but like it's so interesting, and it has this dark humoristic approach that just I fucking loved it.
Yeah, that dark humor again, melding a lot of humor in here with the dark undertones a little bit, and it has almost an us versus them mentality. And I mean, even it's mentioned in the actual film itself, where it's like, are you them or are you us? And it's one of those things where you struggle in terms of where they're presented with the antagonist, but you resonate with him some of the times. You know what I mean? So it's like, and especially the people that are there at the restaurant, you have a hard time sympathizing with them,
Yes.
So I think it was a lot of fun playing with those dynamics. There's a scene in there where they have a lot of the workers chasing the clientele or that have come to the restaurant. That was one that I really would have loved to see them dive a little into more horror because I thought maybe that's where they were going to go with it, but they ended up being a short scene, so it was one of the things where I was like, a little missed opportunity there. But everything that we get in this film, a lot of fun, a great ride. Even the characters where you want to like them and then you realize you actually hate them, So it's just a really great film. I'm excited to go see this again if it's popping up on HBO. It was one that I had actually wished that I had seen prior to this list because it may be higher to me. I don't know. I really enjoyed this film. I've only seen it the one time, but I just remember so many great performances, great concept. Um, there's a character being lowered into the water, oh my gosh, like terrifying stuff just to watch someone descend like that. And again, the social commentary that's on this thing that's attached here. It says this is a film that when I talk about great filmmaking and films that not are just not necessarily horror based, but can end up in great filmmaking lists, this is one of them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Definitely something if you haven't checked out, definitely do yourself a favor when it hits HBO Max. Do it. I really don't think you're going to be disappointed. It does kind of fall into that category where some people be like, is this really a horror film? We've kind of had that a little bit this year with a couple of these, especially with my next pick, which, I'm sure is much higher on your list, and we're going to have to discuss it. But it's one of those things where it's like, uh, it's got shades of horror, but they do it so beautifully. It really again shows how this genre can really be twisted and sampled into a lot of
Yes,
other genres. And I think The Menu is a great example of that.
absolutely.
Alrighty, so that was my number 8, your number 7, which brings us to my number 7, which is Bones and All.
That does appear a little bit higher on my list.
Alrighty, so then we'll move into your number 6, sir.
My number 6 is a film that was a late choice and addition to my top 10. It's Watcher, not The Watcher. It's Watcher. Which this one is appearing on Shutter. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend this one. It is. I didn't know what to expect. Honestly, I watched this because I had seen this popping up in a talking point with a lot of people. So it was like one that I actually sought out because I didn't know. I only had a limited amount of time, and I was like, this one seems like it would really hit with me. And I got to say that it really did. Do you know the concept of this one?
I'm
Because
not
it's
familiar with anything about this other than what I've heard. I know Micah Monroe is in it. I know that a lot of people really love it. And it was another one of those ones that I wanted to see. And it just didn't make my list because I just didn't have the time.
okay.
We've been busy, and it's just one of those ones where it's like I do plan on watching it. And I will admit to you that when I got your text about this, because in real time I got this yesterday, as I was walking out of the whale, I was sitting there just debating on my drive home. Well, it's almost midnight now. It's about 11 o'clock. I gotta go home. I gotta put my son to bed, or at least re-put him to bed, because I'm sure him and my wife are sleeping out on the couch. And it's one of those things where I gotta go do all that song and dance, do a couple of chores. Do I want to push it and stay up and watch this movie to potentially edit my list? And I said, no, I'm just going to have to let it go and let you just inform me.
Okay, well, and I think you made the right choice because I think this is a film that is due for you to, be 100% into it and not just trying to stretch it out to, get a quick viewing in. This one, it's about an hour 35, I think, something like that. And I mean, it flows. It's, again, one of those films where dives into thriller, dives into horror. A case can be made either way here. Very psychological, so absolutely resonates with me. A lot of Rear Window vibes. You'll understand when you hear the premise here. But a young lady and her husband moved to Romania, and this is something that I absolutely love. It's something that I pitched to you a couple years ago in terms of a concept that I had and how scary I feel that it is when they move to Romania and she doesn't speak the language. So in the filmmaker uses perfect scenario here because it takes us out as well because you have characters speaking a different language while the American sits there and has no idea, and we don't use subtitles, so we have no clue what anyone else is saying. So she's a fish out of water just like we are. um there is they live in a high-rise apartment with another high-rise apartment right across the way, and she's looking out the window and notices one floor up and to her left a gentleman always staring at her. And as this happens, that there is a lot of killings happening in town, so she gets freaked out. And another thing that I love here is she's obviously female, and the belittlement, and it's a subtle belittlement. You have to, you'll understand it when you watch it. Of a lot of males saying, "Oh, well, maybe he has a crush on you," and all this, kind of belittling her fear of this. And, this is all building and it's building. And, that's all I'm going to say about this film. It's definitely a great watch. You have to check it out. And the ending is absolutely jarring.
I'm excited. No, I'm really looking forward to checking that out then. Yeah, I can't contribute anything more to the conversation except that I'm happy you got to see it, and that's I have again been seeing this pop up on a lot of people's lists, and I've been seeing it been highly recommended for most of the year, I should say, because this came out kind of early, didn't it? This came out
It came
like
out in June.
June. Yeah, that's what I thought. It came out over the summer. So, alrighty, but that moves into my number 6, which is Prey. It's again, I assume a little higher on your list.
Slightly, yes.
Okay, so then let's move into your number 5, sir.
My number 5 is Prey.
Perfect. Yeah. So, it's been an ongoing joke here, ladies and gentlemen, with us. When this was all kind of announced, the channel hadn't really been put together yet, but we had kind of talked about it a little bit, and then the trailer leaked. I got my hands on some of it, just because people put it on YouTube, and we watched it, and we made a video, and then like a couple days later, it came out for real, and then we just started comparing every goddamn thing to Prey and just really talking about it because we were just like, they need to get this franchise correct. They need to
Yes.
fix it. We're massive Predator fans. And, it's been through the ringer. It has been a tough couple years. And they fucking did it in the year 2022. And I am so happy with how this movie turned out. I have seen this movie, I think, about 5 times now. It is one that I watched, I think, 3 times the weekend it came out. And I love so much about this. I love the only thing that I want when I finish it, I guess the best way to bookend this, my little rant, is when it ends, I just want more. And
Yes.
it's so bite sized. It's just so perfect. But I want to relive that experience again.
And us kind of going through, and I had been reliving the Predator franchise up into Prey coming out, and realizing so much potential in this franchise, and a lot of it not really hitting. And then, years ago, us debating on what they need to do to recalibrate the franchise after the Predator had come out, and it was like strip everything away and all the stuff. And apparently, it's a very popular idea nowadays. But playing with that time period and everything, and it's like finally they were getting it right, and it's like we had high hopes going in. We were hoping that they can get this back on track. And I remember we did a late night get up and watch and do
Yep.
a review, and it was absolutely worth it. It had me engaged as soon as I'd gotten up and started watching this film. I think they made all the right decisions here. There isn't really anything to critique. I love the creature design here; made it feel different. They put a new spin on a franchise that's been decades old and gave us a reason as to why they were doing this. Again, this is a film I've watched countless times since it's come out. I'm still enthralled with it every time I turn it on because it's just a unique. It feels different. It feels like yes, they wanted to take care of the franchise and put it back on track, which they absolutely did. So in a year where a lot of franchise and legacy horror did not really resonate with us, I got to say they at least got the Predator franchise back on track.
Yeah, and I again, uh it is so gratifying to finally be able to say that there's a good Predator movie out again. There are some people who will defend the Predator. We are not in that camp, and we can't be. But it's just one of those things where it's like this is a level of quality that I was really hoping for. We have people like Dan Trachtenberg behind the scenes on this, and it's just he did a bang up job. Give this man whatever fucking franchise he wants at this point, because between this and 10 Cloverfield Lane, he is shaping up to be one hell of a filmmaker, one hell of a storyteller. And do I want to see him continue in the Predator world? I'd like to. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm not 100% sure. I feel like he might move on to something else, but in which case, good. I will see whatever it is. But like, let's keep the momentum going. I know you're not so big on them kind of just taking this concept and doing it over and over and over again, where they just put the Predator in different eras. But I think that we've stripped it down. We've gone to basics. We've seen what works. Let's just stay with that. Even if you don't stay with the concept of putting him in different eras, let's just stay on this course of understanding. Keep it simple. Build that tension. Really make your characters somebody we can root for, and just have some interesting additions, or kind of things you can do with your Predator. Really play into that Predator personality, because they are such expressive creatures. They're so intelligent, as we know from their lore. So it's like you can really dive into that. And I think that that's what they need to do.
And that's where it's like looking at the franchise and there's so much potential. I mean, we did the Predator 2 podcast, which we have an affection for, but there were mistakes made in that film. But
Yeah.
they're even set in the modern time, the time period of the film. It's like that film could have worked. If the right decisions were made, it didn't have to be totally stripped away. It's just unique weapons, a unique setting. The city setting's very fun. So you could bring them into 2023 if you wanted to, just with a great story. So I think that is an available idea. It's just it has to be done correctly. And it's like, again, so many of these Predator films have been so grandiose and so big that they really lost what was supposed to make this, what made the first Predator so great was that tension, the horror, and leaning into it, which I think, Prey did that. And I think it works. It's just, I think a lot of people are going to hang their hat on the changing of time period. It's like, well, look at the story Dan Trachtenberg wanted to tell here, and that's why it works so well. It could have been a shitty story and putting him in a time period, and it wouldn't have worked. But he had an idea, and it was a great idea, and great parallels drawn. So it's like, stick with that. I don't think Dan Trachtenberg needs to come back and do another Prey film, Predator film, anything. I'd love to see him attached to be like an overseer, to be like, okay, let's do this, because he seems to have a great handle on it. But I think you put it in the hands of another great filmmaker and see what we get.
Yeah. I mean, unless he really wants to. If he's like, I want to do more of these, then we should let him. I think it's that the passion's got to be there, but don't force his hand. You know what I mean? Don't make him feel obligated. Don't John Carpenter his ass. You know what I mean? Alrighty. So that was your number 5, correct?
Yes.
Alrighty. So that brings me to my number 5, which is the Black Phone.
Black Phone appears a little bit higher.
A little bit higher. All right. I think from this point on, we should be pretty consistent here.
Yeah,
We
I
should
think
be able
we're
to just talk about it. So hit me with your number 4, sir.
my number 4 is The Cursed.
The Cursed, which is my number 10.
Yes.
This is a very special film. You can go all the way back to the first video we posted on this channel, where we did the Werewolf podcast, where we do a mini review of the
Yeah.
film in there. Is that what we did?
We condensed it. We mentioned some themes and yeah, I think we did like a light review. I think we said we kind of revisit that down the road, when
Heck
we kind
yeah.
of get more traction. And look at us, here we are, still going strong. So that review's got to be coming soon.
I would love to. I think at this point it deserves a podcast episode because,
I think
yeah,
so.
we're fucking werewolf fans, guys. You know this, and this is such a refreshing, interesting, unique take on a werewolf film, and it was something that we were looking forward to this. I had known it as eight for silver when it came out. I think did I tell you about this one, or did you already know about
No,
this?
you told me about it when we were working on a Planet Fitness, and then I
Yes.
became very excited for it, and I forgot all about it. And
Hmm.
then it popped up to be like, hey, this is coming out on Blu-ray, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, because the thing about it was, I remember a couple weeks before it even hit Blu-ray, because this is one of those unfortunate films that's it came out. I think it was January is when it released,
Yep.
and it got like no viewership in the theater. They buried it basically, and so I think it maybe like 3 weeks to a month later, it was on Vudu.
Yeah.
I rented it and we watched it, and I think we were both in agreement just how refreshing and wonderful it was to finally see a really solid werewolf flick with a lot of great characters, a fantastic setting, beautiful cinematography. I think this is one of the most beautiful films of the year. I will admit some questionable CGI at times for the werewolves, even though they have such a unique design and look,
Yeah.
and just the way that they transform and everything, and how you become one. It makes up for it because it does really sell you on this world. But like, yeah, it's one of the best of the year. Instant purchase on Blu-ray, and I loved it because it was only like $12 on Amazon when I bought it. So it's like all the way around, every penny that I spent on this movie was worth it, and I love it.
And that's why it ranks so high for me. It's one of those things where what do you do in a werewolf film to make it feel different? I think The Cursed achieved that, kind of adding its own lore, a different way of storytelling, and that's why it's like it has its own uniqueness in a tale that's old this time, you know. So you can tell Sean Ellis really wanted to put his own stamp on a werewolf film, and he definitely did that with The Cursed. And it's, you know, Eight for Silver, tremendous title. I really wish they would have stuck with it. The opening to this film
Oh my
during the World
god, dude.
War and the gas, and then, you know, he's reciting the nursery rhyme as they pull that bullet out of him, and then we just cut back to, you know, the kids in the time period, you know.
It's I love it when movies do that and they show you such a crucial piece of information before you even know what's going on. And then I mean this has one of the most brutal, I mean we're going to talk another movie very brutal here that you already had on your list, but one of the most brutal fucking scenes I think of 2022 involving a scarecrow.
Oh my gosh.
Oh fuck.
Because I this is one that I did rewatch a couple days ago, and that scarecrow scene for me, so brutal. It's ingrained in your head. If we're doing top 10 horror scenes, that is easily my top five.
Oh yeah.
Uh, that is one thing I really wish they would have leaned into that character a little more. Almost, you could almost take away the werewolf element and add that character in as like the looming threat, and it would just be absolutely terrifying. Because what great imagery, it works. The silver teeth, I think, is a lot of
Mhm.
fun as well. Again, truly a unique werewolf movie, which we never get. And yes, there is questionable CGI. I'm forgiving that just because it's not the biggest budget. They used it sparingly. I think they used it in parts where they had to use it. But again, becoming a werewolf, and then what happens after, you know, you seemingly kill the werewolf in the scene of, you know, where they're dissecting a werewolf, kind of.
So
Wow.
fucking neat, dude. It's so interesting and different. And I mean, honestly, if you're watching this right now and you have not seen it, I think I can say out of all the films on this list, I'm just gonna double check this real quick just to be safe. Yeah, easily. I think this gets my a little Dylan award of most unique take on an old concept uh of the year. And I
Yeah.
mean maybe of the last 5 years. Because again, we are avid werewolf film fans. We love it. We've written a lot of stuff with werewolves, and even us, we tend to write a more of the traditional style of werewolf stuff. We stick to the lore pretty closely. Sean Ellison really just said, fuck that. I'm just gonna make really weird werewolves, and it
Yeah.
works so beautifully. And again, it's still not weird in the sense of funny or darkly humorous or anything. It's all serious and it's great. And I really wish more people would have seen this movie.
Yeah, it's one that I feel like down the road it's going to be discovered by a lot of people, because it's definitely worth a watch and another watch and another watch. You know, because it's just so unique. I love that they dive into a different time period. It makes it feel like, you know, a film with gravitas. Again, they really have a handle on that story, and then they add werewolves into it, which I think is a lot of fun. Just a great film overall. Can't speak highly enough about it. It's one of those things where it shows that werewolf films have a lot left in the tank, and when you get them right, you get them right. You know, so I'm curious to see if this leads to anything more, just from a werewolf perspective. I think we've touched on a couple potential werewolf movies coming out in the next couple of years, but I'm really hoping we get something with gravitas like we did with The Cursed.
I agree. Alrighty, so that was your number 4 or 5.
Uh, four,
That
I
was your
believe.
number 4. So my number 4 is X, which is one that we've already talked about on your list. So
Yes.
we can talk about this one. Yes, this was another one that around this came out. This came out what, mid-February, early March.
Yeah.
So
Just missed. We
I
were going to do a review. We talk about it all the time. We
we
just
were
missed
gonna
it.
do a review when we started the channel. Yeah, it was one for me that I was like, I saw the trailer and I was like, yes, I want to see this. This looks fun. This looks cool. I'm vaguely familiar with Ty West's material. I'm very interested in the 70s aesthetic. Let's see it. Then I had a baby, and that really kind of threw a wrench in some things. So I stayed home and we built the podcast, and we talked about some older movies, and I just didn't get out to the theater to see it, and you didn't either.
No.
So it was just
We
one of
had
those things.
plans to,
We
and then
did.
it just all fell apart.
Yeah, just never really worked out. But before we knew it, it was on VOD. So another one, just like The Curse, I rented it, and we watched it. And I would say, I think that first viewing we were a little lukewarm on it.
Yeah.
We have a review. We have a full review on the channel where we kind of go into this, where we discuss really where our thoughts were. But it wasn't until after my first viewing where I already texted you and said, "Hey, this is how I feel about it," and you were like, "Yeah, I kind of agree." And then I started doing some research, as I do. I start looking at reviews and things, and then I found out there's a prequel to this coming out. This is supposed to be a trilogy of movies. Now that changes a couple things. So we rewatched it with that in mind, and it became one of my favorite films of the year. Just because, again, it's such a unique concept and a ballsy concept to really start a trilogy from the middle. And that's
Yes.
what they did. And that's why I think on that first initial viewing, I was so put off because it felt like we don't have all the information here. We don't have all the pieces. Things don't feel right. And then, we're going to talk about another movie here that is on already lower on your list, Pearl, where I think that, that one really cemented my love for this movie.
Yeah.
That is one of those things where it's like, okay, Ty West, you absolute madman. I get it. I see what you're doing and I love it. And it made me love this movie more. And every time I watch X now, I just have the biggest smile on my face. I love the characters. I love the setting. I love how weird it is. I just get so much more invested every time I watch it. And I pull a little bit more from it each time. I'm always curious now that we have a little bit of backstory more on some of these characters of like, okay, what's the deal here? Why are they acting like this? Why is this happening? It's just overall the whole trilogy as a concept here, genius, and I am so excited for Maxine.
Yeah. And for me, like, since Pearl had come out and rewatching X, it amplifies my viewing of X, because you get context and you're like, oh, this is fun. Everything's tying back in and you really see how thought out this was, because not knowing that this was the middle of a trilogy, I was like, man, they're kind of like holes in this, but it all works. It's all perfection. It's like in going into this one, um, I've seen X quite a few times because it's been more so available since its release, and kind of the divvying up of the characters of giving them each their time and making you not hate any of them, and really enjoying your time with them all. And the time period, the way that Ty West nails the time period, and just the tension that's brought to that farm, and you're just waiting for all hell to break loose, because they lean into it. They're building, and then finally it all just, gets to that tipping point. I think it's all perfect. Even the minor scenes at the very beginning, like where um Maxine is in the water and the alligator comes out and we don't know the context, but the alligator
So
just
much
swimming toward
tension.
her. It's just like, and you're wondering if they're gonna do anything at that moment, and then at the last minute she pops out of the water. It's just like really good stuff. It's like he was building throughout this whole film, and I mean the way that it opens with the massacre and everything like that, and that's not really getting full context of anything. I think it's a lot of fun, and then her saying, what did she say? You're a fucking star or something at the very beginning, and it's just
When
like,
she's doing coke.
yeah, and it's just like, that's gonna tie so well into Maxine. I'm very excited for it. This conclusion of the trilogy, and again, very smart to start right in the middle.
And I think every performance in here, all the actors from across the board are phenomenal. I mean, Mia Goth really playing those dual roles is
Yes.
incredible. Something I didn't know until after the movie ended, and I was just like, "Whoa, what the hell?" I didn't even register to me.
Yeah.
Jenna Ortega didn't care for Scream, loved her in this.
Yeah.
She has one of the
Subtle
most
role,
interesting, yes,
and it's
and
perfect.
she has a very interesting dynamic with another character. And there's a conversation scene with her that, is so oddly, you know, at first you think that it could be taken as exploitative, but they don't. It's
Yeah,
done with a lot of respect and like kindness, and it's so interesting to see Brittany Snow, Kid Cudi, Martin Henderson, all of these people absolutely fucking killed it.
you know,
Uh,
in a kind of slasher almost genre where you're fighting for unique kills. I think every kill in X is so unique and so different, and brings a freshness almost to the genre. And it's just so well done. Ty West clearly had a vision here, and he pulls it off perfectly.
Yeah, literally everybody in this is great, and it is one of those ones where it's like you will, even if you just watch this first, you may not love it, but then when you watch its prequel, I guarantee you it's going to fill in some things, and you're going to go back and watch that and be like, "Wow!" Like I'm so
Absolutely.
excited. All right, so that was my number 4. So we're on to your number 3, sir.
My number three is Bones and All, which
Yes,
already
and that
appeared on your
was
list.
my number 7. This was another one we saw last month in November. This was one of those ones where it could be like The Menu, not considered a pure horror film, but there's definitely horror undertones. Dare I say, maybe a little bit more of a horror film than even The Menu was.
I
Um,
would say so.
yeah, and I know this movie has really stuck with you since we saw it.
Absolutely. Just the storytelling in general, this kind of unique concept of eaters, and telling it in an actual real world setting. This isn't like post apocalyptic or heavy science fiction, anything like that. This is real world stuff. And it kind of being a little bit of a period piece. Timothy Chalamet's performance in this, my gosh, like absolutely stunning. He does not disappoint. The character of Sully, oh wow. There's some heartbreaking stuff in this. I mean, you really resonate with a lot of these characters. The pacing is great. I mean, it's a long film. Luca Guadagnino makes long films,
He
uh,
does.
but it's a breeze to get through. Honestly, it didn't feel like its length. So overall, like this one is another one where just like The Menu, where I said, this is could be appearing in great films of 2022, not just great horror films. And there's a lot of gravitas here, a lot of great shots in this film. Feels real. A lot of care in this film. I keep going back to it. It feels like he had a story to tell, and he really did here.
I said in my review that this feels like a Richard Steinbeck novel come to life, and I really do feel that. This does really feel like it catches a very specific time period, which we never really get a clear idea of when this is taking place. It's
Yeah,
like in some spots it looks more modern, but in other spots it looks old.
almost
Uh,
timeless.
it
You
is
know,
it, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Is like you look at those if you read Richard Steinbeck or anything like that, The Grapes of Wrath or The Pearl or anything like that. It's one of those things where you're just kind of like it's set in a specific time period, but those stories themselves are timeless. And you're right, this is a very timeless film. And you're right, it is a very sad movie. I think that this has the most gut punch of an ending to any
mm,
movie this year.
vicious.
It is I just saw The Whale, and I don't want to spoil anything for that, but that also has a real gut punch in it. But it is one of those things where it's like this film, you spend so much time with these characters, and you go on this journey with them. And you're right, it is unique to find out about the world of these eaters and how they interact with people and just how they live their day-to-day lives. It is truly its own little universe and own little world. And I enjoyed it. I loved it. It's one that I'm excited to own on Blu-ray and definitely go back and revisit. It won't be one that I revisit often. I would say I think this is going to be one of those ones where I do have to be in a very specific mindset to sit down and watch it, because I don't know if this is one that I could say you really benefit from breaking it up. I feel like even though it's a long film, this is one that I think is more experience. You need to sit down and take the whole thing in and really just pay attention and observe and spend time with them, and it's brilliant. I think it's my favorite Luca Guadagnino movie to date. I do enjoy Suspiria. I know you weren't huge on that. I have not seen Call Me by Your Name yet. But I think of the one other movie that I did see, this is my favorite.
Yeah, and honestly, like I've seen Call Me by Your Name and Suspiria, and both didn't really. I mean, they're not horrible films, but they didn't really hit with me, you know. So going into Bones and All, I wasn't really sure how to feel about this one, and I was pleasantly surprised. Obviously, just the relationship between the characters, you
Oh,
know, it feels natural, feels
wonderful.
real. It's like you want to spend time with them, especially the on and off again relationship that they do have. A very coming of age story, you know, in this world of horror undertones and you know, in lesser hands, you know, this would have been something where we try to explain the eaters and what exactly happened here and why they are the way they are. And, you know, Luca Guadagnino just treats it as this is life, you know. They are what they are, and this is the circumstance. There's nothing more, nothing less. There's nothing here to dive into. This is just what they have to do, and that's really what I love about this film. It's taking something that you could say would be more so science fiction or horror and just putting it into an actual real film and saying at face value you're going to accept this and we're going to move on from it, you know, and this is the circumstance, and that's why I absolutely love this film.
Absolutely. And we talked Timothy Chalamet, Taylor Russell. She did a wonderful
Oh
job. I
my
mean, she
gosh.
was really the heart of this movie because she is our protagonist. We follow her, and just like the trials and struggles that she has to go through. There's a consistent, like, not necessarily MacGuffin, but something that she has to listen to throughout the film, and you get more of her backstory through it. It's a really excellent storytelling device, and it is heartbreaking to see what she goes through and what she does. And
There's
then, yeah,
some
like I said,
wild
that
scenes in there.
there
Mm,
is, and that ending, man, is one that I will. It sticks with me,
bones and all.
and probably will. Fucking shut up. Anyway, all right. So my number three is Terrifier 2.
Mm.
Talking bones, talking guts, eating people. How about chopping people? Because Art the motherfucking clown. What a turn, man. We were avidly not fans of that first film.
Mm-mm.
We watched that, we put up a review, we were pretty negative on it. We said, I don't think this is for us. It's kind of just torture porn. And then Damien Leone says, you know what, well, go see my other movie. Yeah, it's 2.5 hours long, and you're gonna be fucking enthralled by it, and you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the characters, you're gonna love the story, you're gonna love Art the Clown by the end of it. He could have fooled me, man, because yeah, when I walking in there, I wasn't sure. Walking out, I was a fan, man. I'm into the Terrifier universe now. I want to go back and rewatch the first one now, and just see if I can gain a little bit more respect, put some respect on its name, just because of how strong this fucking movie was, dude.
You know, I'm gonna let you dive into that viewing solo because you know I respect what they were trying to do, and Damien Leone coming out and kind of saying, "No, it's a showcase. It's what we thought it was," and hey, I get it. You know, so going into this one, didn't have high expectations. I'll tell you what, if there's one viewing I could bottle and sell to people, it's this viewing to go to Terrifier 2, to sit in that theater and just to be encapsulated in a viewing of something. And you know, it was a drive to get there, and it's a drive to get back. But there was a high during that, and it was just it was perfect from that opening scene. Art the clown going into the cleaners to wash his suit, standing there naked. Uh, my gosh, you're like, what am I in for here? And I'll tell you what, I wish I could go back and sit back in that seat and do that first viewing over again because there was nothing like it. Um, he, you know, said, you know, there is a story here to tell, and he told it for 2.5 hours. And I'll tell you what, that 2.5 hours was perfect because, you know, it leaves you asking questions. There's still a lot of questions we have. We can't wait to see the third one.
I know.
It opens so many doors. Art the Clown, you know, I didn't know how to feel about him in that first film. I'll tell you what, I am sold on him being a horror icon for years to come. I hope that this translates. If we keep doing Terrifiers, I'm cool. But if he starts injecting Art the Clown in other stories as well, hey, I'm here for it.
I know. He's such a goofy, like he's goofy at one moment. You think about the scene with the sunglasses,
Yes,
and then the next moment he's fucking like
cutting
butchering this
people's
man
heads
in a
off. Yep,
costume shop. It has some of the most visceral gore. I mean, like
it's
everybody talks
quirky
about
and
it.
it's just carnage all over the place.
It is, and it all works. And my dad, God bless him, he's probably watching this right now. He tried to get through it. This is not for him.
No,
He did his best. I want him to at least try to finish it. But it is one of those things where for me and like you, and just like the community that this film has formed, online and stuff, the people you talk to about it, it's just so crazy to just see this little movie do so well, and then to just like go into it again, pretty low expectations. i
hmm
i was like, damn, 2.5 hours, I don't know what to expect. It was definitely, when it started up and he's chopping up the doctor and everything, it picked right up after the first one. I was like, okay, so we're just hopping right into it. And then, the little girl shits at the at the fucking the thing. I was like, okay, we're just back into this. Like, this is what it is for 2 hours. And then they introduce Sienna. And then they introduce all these other characters. And then we start sitting with these characters for like 30 minutes. And I'm just like, okay, wow, we're like
we
really
actually have
getting into these
dialogue
people.
here.
There's dialogue. They're not saying fuck every 2 seconds. Like not to say they did that in the first one, but it's like, if this was Rob Zombie or Joe Bagos, that's what they'd be doing. But it's one of those things where I was just like, okay, I'm really getting in it. And then Art the Clown starts coming back, and suddenly you're right. Like I'm into it. I get it. I like it. I love it. I have this digitally. I plan on buying the 4K, and I'm even planning on buying that Steelbook.
And
Uh, I love this fucking movie, man. I've seen it now probably 3 or 4 times. I think 4 times, 3.5. Let's say I still have a viewing that I have to get back to, but it is again, it's really glides every time I watch it.
as we record this, and I'm assuming as this video comes out, it's still going to be 7.99 on Vudu.
Hmm.
I have yet to pick it up, but I'm going to because that is such a steal for this film. Um, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. You have to be into kind of ultra violence though, but there is a story here. And I'll tell you what, you don't give me any story, and you just give me the Clown Cafe, and hey, man, I'm golden. Like that song was stuck in my head for at least a good week, and I still can't listen to it
The
without.
Clown Cafe and
Yeah,
Chris Jericho and Lucas Sold.
there we go. Those are the only two things I need in a horror film, and we're golden. So, I'm waiting. Let's open up Terrifier 3. I want to see Art the Clown take on Chris Jericho,
I
and,
hope so, man.
that's the
I
perfect
really
opening.
do. Even though he's just a severed head at that moment, spoilers, sorry. I really want to see it. Yeah, man. It's going to be like 2 or 3 years before we get
Yeah,
this sequel,
we'll
and
be in that no
that
matter.
hurts to see, that hurts to hear.
But like, we had to drive a minute to go see it. I hope again we do because God, what an experience getting there, sitting in that theater. I would not trade it for the world. One of the highlights of my 2022. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Definitely one of the best theatrical experiences. It makes those long drives very special.
Yes.
Even, I don't want to segue too far here because we got a few more films to wrap up here. But like even for something like The Mean One, which we were pretty critical on.
Yeah.
Uh, we had our piece to say on that. We definitely think after speaking with the director himself, kind of understanding his vision more, we want to maybe give that a revisit and really see it with some fresh perspective. I don't think it's going to make me love the movie, but it's definitely going to make me maybe a little less harsh on some of
Yeah.
the things we were. I still enjoy when we have to go take a journey, when we have to go on a trip.
Absolutely.
And I think it all has to go because of this Terrifier trip, because getting in there, that's what I expected. I expected that same level. It didn't meet that high, but I don't know if anything ever will.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, you're right. The vibes were right. It all worked. It was fun. It was gory. Beautiful. Thank you, Damien Leone. This is easily, uh, this is my number three. Yeah, this is deserves that spot in the top three.
It's a landmark film. It's going to be a temple in indie horror for years to come. It's going to be a catalyst to getting a lot of indie horror into theaters. We're already seeing that happening. The wheels are turning. Who knew Terrifier 2 would be such a defining film, but it is, and oh my gosh, we're a better community having this out here.
I never thought we'd fucking say this about Art the Clown movie.
My
Oh my
gosh,
god, I love it. I really
2022 is a
do.
great year.
This is fucking nuts. All right, brother, hit me with your number two.
My number two, it was steadfast at number one for such a long time, but and I don't know, maybe it could be again. Maybe fatigue has been setting in after Splatterthon. It could be a very real possibility. But my number two, the Black Phone.
Yes, and that was my number five. Yeah, I feel for you. I know the moment we walked out of that movie theater, that was another one for 2022 where you were just like, wow, you lit up, my friend. Like it's a very, I don't want to say it's rare. When you see a good movie, but like when I see you come out of a movie and you're very quiet for a minute because I know you're processing everything and you're thinking, and then you start talking about it and then you keep talking about it. It's some of my favorite conversations we have after a theater experience because it's just like that. And Terrifier 2, it's like I could tell you really enjoyed this, and I loved it as well. It's one of those things where it's like I feel like the amount that you enjoy it, I don't think it's probably like this, but from even my perspective, I feel like a lot of people think that maybe I don't enjoy this movie because you've enjoyed it so much and because you're
Yeah,
so positive on it. You saw it 3 times in theaters,
I did. Yes,
and then you've subsequently seen it a number of times.
it was
uh
available on Peacock, and I think maybe I went a little hard prior to Splatterthon, and then preparing for the podcast, and then doing a watch along for this film. I haven't revisited it since October because I'm still having that little bit of a hangover.
you need to take a
Af
break.
Yeah, so, you know, it's still a great film. I mean, it's my number 2. There's a lot to learn here, a lot of great character work from, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting? Ethan Hawke, and, the kids in this film, phenomenal casting. Finney's great, the relationship between brother and sister, just a lot of great stuff going on here. It kinda really keeps that pacing of the tension and the horror, really evident. Really a lot of fun, very horrifying. I remember sitting in that theater as the credits rolled, and you asked me how I felt about that film, and I said, "That's a fucking movie." You know what I mean? Like, and it is really great stuff.
Can I be honest with you? When you say that though, I don't know how to take that.
Yeah,
This year, it started to become more of a positive thing, but in the past, you have said that about things like Transformers: The Last Night. So, like, just think
yeah.
about that next time you say it, because like there was a slight couple of seconds where I was like, "Did he really not like this?"
I love
Um,
when you never know how I feel about movies and you start second guessing everything. But yeah, this one, really great theater experience. Very different than Terrifier 2. Obviously, this was a big release, but something I had been anticipating. They kept moving this release date, so finally, when it was in the theater, I was absolutely excited to go see this. Great opening. Opening credits for this, and then we really get into the meat of the story, and it's just all really well done.
Yeah, I second all of that with you, my friend. It's one of those ones where, okay, to be honest, um unlike you who was really anticipating it, I was kind of like, okay, it looks cool. It is what it is. I it was something that it wasn't until like I want to say a week or two before the film came out, or maybe it was the week of, where I was like, all right, Scott Derrickson, let's take a look at some of your stuff. And I watched Sinister, and we ended up covering it on the podcast because my viewing was so positive on it. And it was one of those ones where it's like, okay, I think I may have jumped the gun on this. Maybe 15, 16-year-old Dylan didn't know what he was talking about when he watched Sinister for the first time. So I already went into it like, okay, let's see what you got. Let's see, take me on a journey here. And God, just from when you get to those opening credits, I knew that we were in for something special.
Yeah.
We were in for a goddamn treat. That opens with the Budweiser cracking open. It really sets that tone for the 70s really well. And I was just like, yes, okay. And I like Doctor Strange. I do. I like this version of Scott Derrickson so much more. I would, I would pay. I would do a lot just to have him stay in this realm where he's
Yes.
making these more grounded, serious, spookier tales rather than doing the big budget stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's just so nice to see. Because I have to say it every fucking time we bring up Marvel. I'm a big Marvel fan, but those movies are a vision. It is a full, story with millions of hands in the pot. It's not one singular vision. It's very rare that you get a movie that's like that. I think Thor Ragnarok is an exception to that rule, but it is one of those things where it's like you don't get that. This film is so much, Robert Cargill and Scott Derrickson and Joe Hill. Like it is those three men's vision, and they play it so beautifully. And you're right, Ethan Hawke is incredible. The kid who plays Finney is incredible. I want to get their names because I am. It's disrespectful that I'm not remembering them. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Like this was one of those ones that has stuck with me. I haven't watched it as much as you've watched it. But it is one of those things where it's like every time I do think about throwing it on, I do get a little bit excited. So
Yeah, and I mean, just the jump from the original Joe Hill short story into the film, you really see that stamp that Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill put on the actual film itself, because there are so many deviations from that original source material, and the way they expand upon a lot of things to get to that hour and a half kind of film. It really feels like the Joe Hill short story is one of its own, as well as the film is one of its own. So very unique in both senses. I think the Scott Derrickson Robert Cargill version is just absolutely tremendous. The way they express the grabber on film, I mean, it makes such for an iconic villain. It's just a great movie. Like, I can't speak highly enough of it. If you haven't checked it out and it's available on Peacock, it's worth a watch, worth multiple watches. Just don't overdo it. But it's really great stuff.
agreed. And it's Mason Thames for Finney, or Thames, and Madeline McGraw.
There we go.
Perfect, wonderful child performances. Definitely for the books this year. All righty. So, moving into my number two, we are talking Pearl. Um, I always like to think that when I watch other people's lists, I can kind of deduce what people are going to pick, and probably a lot of you guys can deduce what's our number one after this one. But it is one of those things where this movie, honestly, it it definitely had a shot. It had a shot. It was for a minute, but I had to go with my heart of hearts on my number one. But this was my number one for probably a couple days.
Yeah.
I did recently just pick it up on Vudu and was watching it and just falling in love with it all over again. Um, I think that this, to me, when you're talking X and Pearl, is my preferred of the two, just to get that out in front. It's a beautiful nightmare in every sense of the word. It is the Wizard of Oz uh meets The Shining in my eyes. Like it's that kind of a tone, and I love everything about it. I love the Technicolor aspect to it. I love the kind of psychological horror of the abusiveness of her mother, and just how Pearl became Pearl. And then also just the hint of like, was she always this way? Was her mother actually protecting us? Or is this, it just adds another few layers to this character. And again, it makes me love another movie even more. We talk about how Halloween Ends made us like Halloween Kills in 2018 more. That for all the wrong reasons, Pearl for all the right reasons. Um, I love that we're getting this trilogy in about a year and a half turnaround. The fact that we had the prequel and the first film in the same year is amazing. I love the idea. It's wild, it's different. And I think that Mia Goth, being not only an actress in this and the last one, but a writer on this, like she helped develop the story, is just brilliant because she has written herself, in my eyes, a career defining role with this character. And I think that this trilogy, when we're sitting here, 40 years from now, and we're old men and we're talking about movies of 2022 or even just her career in general, I think this film is going to be referenced.
You know, and to look at this and us kind of putting these lists together, and everything's always fluid, everything's ever changing, so
It always
nothing's
is.
cemented here. To be completely transparent, I've seen X way more than I've seen Pearl. I've seen Pearl up until about what, maybe 3 hours ago. One time, and that was in the theater. I decided to turn on Pearl before we turned on these mics and cameras and record this. And I will say that, my God, Pearl, it should not sit at my number 10. This is much higher on my list now after that second viewing because I unfortunately had forgotten a lot of things in this movie. And they are,
With this year, man, I don't blame you.
yeah.
Like, I mean, there's so much to remember, but yeah.
Um, so I mean, just going into this and the time period, it being a period piece, the color palettes, just the visuals in general, it's all so gorgeous. The use of red against a lot, the vibrant setting here, just my God, like Ty West had a very specific vision here, and it's like to look at this film and then to look at X, and it's like X is very distinct in its own right in the way that he shot that, but Pearl is so distinctive again in its own right, and it's very intriguing. They both coming out in the same year, very short turnaround from X to Pearl, and the quality is absolutely there with Pearl, and we get to see Mia Goth stretch her legs even more in Pearl and really get a handle on this character. That it's very intriguing in X. We don't get the backstory, but then like I said, Pearl amplifies my viewing of X because we finally get that context. And I'll say, like, just Mia Goth's performance in Pearl is just times 10 here because we get to see a lot more with her, and the kind of the parallels they draw with wearing masks and things like that. I think was a lot of fun in kind of the dance they had to do while filming this. I thought was really great kind of context. A lot of great gore in this as well. Again, very sparing, but when it happens, it makes it count. The visuals are tremendous, and that home life that she has, and her wanting to get off the farm is not something that a lot of people cannot relate to. So I think in that aspect you relate to this character, but then you see that she's a little out there a little bit, so but then you also just love being in her presence because of what she brings. I mean, her with the scarecrow in the field, it's like, oh my God.
It's so strange, but
It's just so off kilter, offbeat, kind of stuff here. A lot of very unique things going on. It's a great movie, and again, this is another one where a lot of horror undertones here. It's like so much gravitas is brought to this film that it's like you can look at this and like you said, this performance is going to be talked about for years to come. And I think this again adds so much into the horror community as well, just because of the gravitas that Ty West brings to the filmmaking here.
I agree. And it's such a unique time we're living in, again, where we get to have all these movies come out in such quick succession of each other. But for them to be at the quality that they are, they're really going to have to do a lot to really make Maxine not work, in my opinion. Even if it doesn't hit where I need it to hit, these two films are still excellent compendium pieces to each other. And Pearl to me is one that I see myself revisiting over and over again because of just how captivating and scary Mia Goth is in this, as to where X feels more like something I would throw on when I just want to really enjoy, a slasher,
Yes.
and sit down and just have some fun and some laughs. And, that's that, as to where Pearl is more of that high art horror or elevated horror, I guess, as you would say. And, even though it still has those slasher vibes, it's such an interesting juxtaposition, and it's so weird that it works.
It's a wild ride. In
Mhm.
where we talk about elevated horror and maybe it's a little too pretentious sometimes, where this one I think it maintains its horror roots perfectly, where it's like it's elevated visually, but the roots in horror are, general audience. It's like if you're a horror fan, I think you can enjoy this without feeling like, "Ugh, I'm not a
this
elevated horror fan."
this and I mean, I may be, sucking the Ty West tit too much here, but I'm just saying it. This feels like a movie that Stanley Kubrick would make,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Just like how the camera operates, how it
Yeah.
moves, how the
I can definitely see
characters
that.
interact with each other, and everything. Like, this feels like that. This feels like a Martin Scorsese horror film, to me, in a lot of ways, where it's just like, we really focus up on the character of Pearl and just like where she goes, especially with that ending and that shot of her going down the driveway, chasing that person. Because I don't want to be too
Yeah.
spoilery.
What a
It's
visual.
it
It's
is,
it's
dude.
wonderful.
It's unsettling because there's no music, there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's just her chasing her. I
And
can't
then
wait till we pick this for the
and
podcast.
there's what I think, is it a dream sequence or where she sees her mother out in the audience and she's got a face mask on and she
Oh
takes it off?
yes, yeah, no,
Like,
when she's up on stage, yeah.
yes,
Yeah, and that's something I didn't notice the first time. We have to talk about Pearl some more sometime,
absolutely.
because like I that is something I noticed on my second viewing here, of who else is in that audience and who's in those chairs. It's like, oh, it's so good. So good. I loved it.
Great film.
Absolutely. But hey, we're coming down to the wire here. Coming down
We've arrived.
to the final pick. Yes, as you were saying, we've arrived.
In variations on our list, we great minds think alike. So we both settled on the exact same one for number one of the year.
We did. And, I think that, again, if you're an eagle eyed viewer, if you've been watching us for any amount of time here, you've probably heard our praises of this film. We've mentioned it a lot. And if you can deduce from everything else we've talked about, you can already notice that one film hasn't been spoken about yet. And that film is Barbarian. And yes, Barbarian is both of our number one films of 2022.
My gosh. And I think this was interesting because Dylan,
Mhm.
you didn't know what to feel going into this.
No,
Um,
I honestly saw this trailer and thought that this was just going to be something generic and was going to be something throwaway. And I couldn't have been more wrong.
and I was actually excited for this film. I remember I was talking about the trailer, and I kept saying, everyone I talked to, I remember you're like, I don't think I've seen this trailer. And I was like, it's been in front of a couple things. And then um, I was excited because I was like, I wanted to see this for a very different. I think I thought I was coming into a different story,
Mhm.
completely. So again, I guess I couldn't have been more wrong because I didn't know what I was in for.
Yeah, and I said in our review, we don't get movies like this anymore when you do find out what this is. Something with like this uh, dark of a concept and this, odd and weird. It's very much in line with something like, it's not deeply in line, but like it still has those tones of like a Malignant
Yes.
or I said Basket Case
Hmm.
is one that I'd recommend it to, or Castle Freak or something like that.
It's got that tone that
Yes.
you can't put your finger on it. It's like you said, Malignant. I've mentioned Malignant several different times on anything that we talk about, where it's not afraid to lean into that sort of horror, and Barbarian easily does that, where it makes it itself feel unique and different. And it's like, nope, we're going straight horror. It's like this is face value. This is what we're doing. You're either here for it or you're not. And as soon as they did it, I remember as the credits rolled, and me and you kind of just sat there, and it was just like, I don't know how I feel about this one yet. And then leaving the theater and driving home, I started going, I really like this movie.
Hmm. Yeah, you needed a minute
Yep.
because it is just one of those things where it's like it does kind of hit you, and you have to sit there and just be like, everything I just saw was very different, very unique, very unexpected. Again, it hits you like a truck the first time you see this
Yes.
movie. Once you start to realize what's going on, and I've shown it to some people, and some people I've shown it to really enjoy it. Some people I've surprisingly have not been a fan of it.
Yeah. Well, it's a variation of taste, I think. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Where it's like, I think you look at the Black Phone, I think, even straight up like non-horror fans can maybe find some enjoyment in that film, like a general audience, whereas Barbarian, I feel like it is very much a horror community kind of film.
Yes, this is for horror lovers, and I think we said that in our review too. Like, this is
Yep.
very much for our community, and yeah, I think that it feels unique, but it is also very much, like I said, harkening back to kind of that 70s style underground horror film, where it's like this feels like a story we get then. The subject matter that it deals with, dealing with things like incest and trap, I guess, kidnapping and things like that. It's not afraid to go dark. It has a lot of really interesting social commentary about stuff that's going on today, as far as things like the Me Too movement, which was unexpected.
Yeah.
There's a lot of twists and turns. There is a complete shift in this movie that no one will ever see coming. And it's just something that kept me on my toes the entire time.
Yeah.
And we talk
Even
about the Black Phone and Terrifier 2. This was another one of those theater experiences where I was just like, holy shit.
even in the end of this film, I'm still going, is this happening? It's like it
Mhm.
keeps up momentum straight up going throughout the entire film, because we get to one aspect of this film and you think you're in for something. And then it flips it on its head. And it's like, okay, you think like, okay, that's it. Now I know what I'm in for. And they keep doing it throughout this film and keep you engaged throughout it. And it feels organic. It doesn't feel like they're trying. It all makes sense to the story, and it all works and flows. So it's like this is by far for me the most unique film of 2022, just because of every twist and turn they wanted to do in this film. And I think they achieved it tenfold.
I can't agree more. This is one that I'm excited to do on the podcast at some point down
Absolutely.
the road here. We've got a lot of picks. We are releasing an update video, or have released it by now. It really just depends on how we do the next few days. Where we're talking about how we're going to structure the podcast, where we're doing one episode a month instead of two. And it's one of those things where it does kind of limit the opportunity to of picks, but I think that, again, it's going to open the door for some other content on the channel that we think will do really well and things like that. But so even if it takes a minute to get to this, I'm excited to get there, because this is going to be one of those things where I uh, I want to be able to find out more, maybe
Yes.
before we dive into this deeper. I want to hear more from Zach Krieger. I want to know. I've tried really hard to reach out to this man and get him on the show. Obviously we are tiny, and we're just a little tiny ant compared to the ant mound of other ants trying to knock down his door right now and say, please sir, can I have an interview? But maybe one day we'll get him on here and we can really dissect his brain and see what's going on. Because, yeah, I think that this is unique. It's refreshing. It's fun. It's fucked up. And it's my favorite horror film of 2022.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive deeper into this. I hope more comes out, whether we get some sort of commentary for it and kind of
I hope
understand
we
the
get a Blu-ray.
mindset. Yeah, and it's like one of those things where we did the Black Phone, and there's only so much released right now, information wise, on that film. It's like Barbarian is something I really want to handle really in depth if we can get that information and just really do a deep dive into this because it's such a unique story, so different than anything that we're used to seeing in the theater. And is one of those strong films that we put in that horror lineup to say, yeah, this is something you have to watch, and this is what horror brings to the table. And Barbarian is that film. I mean, obviously number one here. Man, it's uh, unique twists and turns, great effects. It really keeps you on your toes throughout. Very dark tone, very different than anything you're used to seeing. Overall, tremendous film. It's one of the strongest horror film of 2022.
I could not agree more. Alrighty. That brings us to the end, folks. We've done it. Our top 10 of horror films of 2022. Just a little sound off here. Quick little recap, just so that way it's like, you don't have to go back through the video and be like, oh, who was what and what was what. My number 10 is The Cursed. Number 9 is Nope. Number 8 is The Menu. Number 7 is Bones and All. Number 6 is Prey. Number 5 is The Black Phone. Number 4 is X. Number 3 is Terrifier 2. Number 2 is Pearl. And of course, number 1 is Barbarian.
Oh man, I'll do mine too. Number 10 is Pearl. Number 9 is X. Number 8 is Terrifier 2. Number 7 is The Menu. Number 6 is Watcher. Number 5 is Prey. Number 4 is The Cursed. Number 3 is Bones and All. Number 2 is The Black Phone. And of course, coming in at number 1, same as Dylan, Barbarian, that round off the best horror films of 2022.
Yeah, and this, again, fantastic year in horror. We can't understate it enough of just what a special time this was. I'm excited to see what 2023 is going to bring. We talked a little bit about that at the start here. We've got things like Skinamarink coming out, really strong up front. We've got supposedly an Exorcist film coming out. I mean, even if I just pull up a list here, there's a ton of stuff on the horizons.
We got
Winnie
the
the
new
Pooh, Blood and
Scream,
Honey. Yeah, the new Scream.
Megan.
One that's not a pure horror, but 65 looks pretty intriguing to
Cocaine
us
Bear.
there. Cocaine Bear. That's going to be a whole bunch of fun. It's going to be hopefully another strong year. How will it stack up to this one? It's going to be tough to beat, man.
Yeah.
It is going to be tough to beat.
Got big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be people who are mad that we never even mentioned Smile. Which I thought we thought was all right, but it just I don't think really blew us away as
No.
much. But I know that one really resonated with people.
Yeah.
So it's something where it's just going to be like that is that's just another one to really show. I mean, we got really lucky, I would say, this year with just the quality that we got. There were some duds in there. We talked about them. But it is one of those things where it's like they can't all be winners. But in this,
But we
year,
had a
man,
lot of
we
winners.
had a lot of winners. Yes. I mean, fuck. I'm forgetting. We got Infinity Pool this upcoming month, which is crazy to think it's already going to be coming out. Evil Dead Rise. Shelby Oaks. All these other movies are coming out this year. That's going to be fucking nuts.
Hopefully 2023 is going to give us another wild ride in the realm of horror.
100%. But alrighty, guys, that is going to wrap us up here for this video on the channel. Again, this is a lot of fun. I think I quoted us at 1 hour and 5 minutes before we turned on this camera. It is an hour and 53 minutes in. So if you sat with us through this whole thing, thank you so very much. And we really appreciate you. Let us know what your top 10 of the year is. Let us know what your honorable mentions are. Throw some dishonorable mentions in there. Fill the whole list out. We want to read them. I want to know how you guys feel about our lists. What is the best horror film? What is your most anticipated horror film of 2023? And yeah, I mean, just keep up with us as always on the channel here. Hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed, as well as follow us on our social medias at Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at SplatterCastPod, where you can keep up with all the latest and greatest. And yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming in 2023. A lot of big plans coming down the pipeline. We got some good reviews coming up this month, as we just teased. And yeah, it's going to be a wild one. So keep your eyes out, ladies and gentlemen. This is day one. And, I'm excited to see where this journey takes us. We are a lot further on this channel than I thought we'd be by this time this year doing this list. And I'm excited to see where we end up this time next year and where we're at subscriber wise, where we're at growth wise. Because, yeah, you guys have really opened your arms and accepted us, and we really appreciate it.
I'm excited for another year here to knock out some of these unique horror films, as well as some of this hopefully returning legacy horror, and hopefully this stuff resonates with us this time around here in 2023. But even if it is some struggles in turbulent times, we'll find some very unique content to put on the channel regardless, and dig up some oldies but goodies for you. So it'll be a fun time on the channel, hopefully a fun time at the theater, and we get a lot of unique things coming out just like we did in 2022.
Yes, sirree. Alrighty, so I guess that about wraps us up. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.